Welcome to the Magical Mommy Monday podcast. We really appreciate you listening. We'll be talking about everyday mom life with some pixie dust from Disney thrown in from time to time. This is a judgment-free zone. We know everyone parents differently, and we're just two moms doing our best as we figure out this whole parenting thing. So now, let's get this party started with today's episode.
I texted Jen today. I don't know, Alexis, if you're a fan of Walt Disney World, but I texted Jen today and I just basically had a Disney meltdown. And I told her, I'm like, I feel like there's this missing void. Like Jen and I kind of bonded and Frank bonded over our love for Disney on the Twitterverse, the Disney Twitterverse. Yeah. And I just feel like we have this missing void. And it's just like, I just got sad today thinking like, okay, it's just, there's nothing there.
Absence of the magic of Disney. Yeah.
It is. And I don't know. Is there something like that for you during quarantine that just something's missing for you right now? Is it work?
Target.
Target.
Yes. Target. Yeah.
Target.
No, I also love Disney. I am not as Disney crazed as Jen and the Dillos are. I do love the magic of Disney. It is a magical place.
Yes.
And my sister-in-law was about to surprise my brother and her kids for my brother's 50th birthday, which is in 3 weeks. And they were going. And I couldn't have been like, I even just feel the excitement right now. I couldn't have been more excited for them. They've never been, my brother's never been, we didn't go as kids. Yeah. And I went when I first got married and then I took my kids several times, but they have never been. So I was beyond excited and disappointed for them, but hopefully they'll go in the fall.
Oh, I hope so.
I know, me too.
Oh, something about the first trip. I get so excited for people.
Yeah. I know. And I was helping her plan it. I was so excited. Everything was being sent here. I was getting all the packages.
Oh my gosh.
Magic bands were coming to you.
Yes. And I was, it's ridiculous because my kids are now 18 and 20. And I haven't been in a while. My ex-husband and I, who were very close, and we took them together many times, but we have been, once my sister-in-law told me she was planning a trip, the two of us were like, oh, we should go back. So then we were planning it. My kids are like, whatever, we don't really want to go, but my ex-husband and I want to go back. Yeah. So we were going to take them back, whether they liked it or not.
Oh my gosh. Okay. Yeah. First of all, that's adorable. Yeah. Second of all, I love that you helped them plan a trip because that's exactly what Jen and I would do. We'd be like, you don't even get a choice. This is happening because you're going to do it correctly or you're not going to go at all.
Jen was also going to help because I'm not as up on it as Jen is. Obviously.
Right.
There's nothing Jen does.
And I also would have been on that trip with her entire family. So that she's planning for herself. So she doesn't know that part. So
no, that was part of my plan.
I'm helping you plan. Yep. And booking our tickets. What room were you in?
What dates are those? That brings me to my third question.
Perfect dates for me.
Where were you going to stay with your kids and ex-husband?
We hadn't even gotten that far because it's so unrealistic for us. It was just our little fantasy because we do think of Disney as just, I'm like gleeful even talking about it.
Oh my God.
Like a magical place. Because I would like to go to Europe. I mean, there's a lot of places I would like to go to. Even like in some ways more than Disney, but Disney is such a magical place. Like you just think of it as like, it's just soothing and it's just the magic of Disney.
Yeah. I want to go to Europe too, but I'll go on like a Disney cruise to Europe someday or like Adventures by Disney or something.
I cannot cruise.
Yeah.
I did it once.
Yeah.
Freaked me out. I did it. Beautiful, lovely. So many things I loved. Freaked me out though to bring my kids and I got very sick.
Yeah. Oh, did you? Well, yeah. I've never been a fan of the cruising, but then my sister also, I have a sister who's much younger than I am, and she worked on one of those cruise ships for a year. And nothing has ever confirmed for me that I'm correct in not wanting to cruise more than her working on a cruise ship.
I'm sure it's so different.
So the Dillos were all supposed to go on a non-Disney cruise in August Big
Really?
Mama Papadillo. I know.
I didn't know
you gotta
this.
You gotta start the kids off real bottom, So like you can't start them with Disney. You gotta go, because then we can
I
never
can't
go
believe
back.
the Dillos planned a non-Disney vacation.
I know, it's weird. Well, because Mama and Papadillo, big cruisers, cruise in 1 to 2 times a year, and they will go on Celebrity or whatever. Yes.
It's like a boomer thing.
They don't even care where they go because they will stay on the boat. My dad, it's like my dad can only relax in Disney or on a cruise. They don't go anywhere else except Disney or a cruise.
That's a Dillo thing.
It sure is.
My dad will only go places that he's safe and familiar with.
Yeah.
If you're contained and everything's taken care of and he's familiar with it, it's like, okay, I'm taken care of. I'm safe. I'm in my bubble. We're good.
Yeah. My parents have never gone to like the West Coast. What? Why? Why would you get on a plane and go out there?
I'm definitely
territory.
not a Dillo. Yeah.
No.
It's not a purse off vacation. No.
It freaks me out. Yeah.
Let's say best case scenario, everything's just so much better 3 weeks from now, which won't be the case. Do we want to get on a cruise ship with so many people in a confined space in a couple of months? Probably not.
Not so much.
No. So he finally canceled it. He's like, I pushed it back a year. I was like, okay, that's fine.
That's good.
Where was the cruise to?
Yes.
Where were we going? I think Bahamas, because I think we were actually stopping in Port Canaveral, and I was like, for how many hours and where can we go in Disney to get on property for just a couple hours?
Yes.
So I think we were doing that. I think, because at first he was like, oh, we're going to the Caribbean. And then I look it up. I'm like, no, we're going to the Bahamas. You don't even know where you book these cruises. Like, what are you doing?
Because he's not getting off the ship.
Because he doesn't care.
No, he doesn't.
As long as he's on the water.
Unrelated, do you guys call your dad or Pops?
His dad. I don't know why we started the Mama Papadillo thing on Theme Park Thursday, but that has sort of stuck where now the Diz Twitter community refer to them as Mama Papadillo.
That's funny.
But no, he is mom and dad.
Okay. It just doesn't fit with the accent to call them mom and dad.
I know. But I do think probably still if we're referring to them to other people, I probably don't do it as much anymore, but I'm sure a mommy or daddy will come out. And like my dad will say that like, talk to mommy about the thing, like whatever. Like he'll say mommy to me. And I feel like me and my brother used to do that. Probably not as much anymore.
We do call my dad daddy sometimes.
Yeah.
And when we all say it, like, when it comes out of my mouth, I'm like, did I just say that?
I know.
I say daddy.
Yeah.
I do.
Yeah.
But I don't call them mommy and daddy. Like, I don't know the last time I've said that to them. But maybe it's since becoming a mommy that then I've like backed off.
Because now you're a mommy.
Right.
Yeah.
I don't know.
We don't have the mommy thing. Although I refer to my stepmother, not as my mommy, but my little sister still calls her mommy or refers to her that way sometimes. So when I talk to her sometimes, I say that, but
funny. The names that we have.
Yeah.
I know.
We'll talk about a tangent. Okay. We haven't even introduced our guest. Okay, Jen, this is your guest. It's our guest, but it's your personal friend.
Our guest. Are we going to have songs?
Oh my gosh.
Yeah, look at you.
I've been practicing for church on Sunday, so don't get me started. I've been singing a lot lately. All right. This is your personal real life friend, Jen. So I'm going to let you do the introduction today.
I do the intro?
Yeah. You get to do it today.
I'll do it because I'm very afraid of crying on this episode. So
you're going to make me cry?
I'm warning you now. Yes, I'm warning you now.
Well, you
now.
You're the brave one. You did not cry during the anxiety episode, and I did. So I will not.
But my eyes were welled when you were. So I mean, it was close. But I think this episode may. But look, you can't cry because then I'll cry.
If you do, I will.
I will try to keep it together.
Keep it together, Angela, because it's a sinking ship over here.
Okay. Go.
Welcome to the Magical Mommy Monday podcast. We are very excited for another episode. Last week we spoke We meant to make it a light episode.
That failed.
That failed because we planned our ideal Disney vacation and all it did was depress us because now we want the ideal Disney vacation.
Yep. And it's going to be really expensive.
It's going to be so expensive. I don't know where I'm getting the money for it. I played it for my husband as I was editing it so that he could hear, and it was depressing him. And he's like, man, we got to go on this trip. And this is so depressing to listen to. I'm like, I know. But we tried. We tried to make it not depressing.
It will be so worth it, though.
It will be worth it. And we'll get into some more, I guess, about we'll do a little recap here in a moment. But I do want to introduce our guest because you have heard her voice probably if I didn't edit out 20 minutes worth of show because there's plenty there. But you have heard her voice already. So our special guest today is Alexis, who is a speech language pathologist extraordinaire. I really wanted to get the extraordinary in there and it was messing me up. So welcome, Alexis, to the Magical Mommy Monday podcast.
Well, thank you so much for having me. I feel so honored.
Of course. Thank you for joining us.
Oh, my pleasure, of course.
Welcome to the show. And fun fact, that was actually my major going into college.
Really?
Yeah, for like the first year. I can't remember why I switched, but I did. Yeah. And now I went to UW Eau Claire.
Oh, very nice.
Yeah, they had a pretty good program too. And I can't remember why I switched, but I did. But it makes me so even more excited to talk to you because this was my major for a whole year.
That's so exciting.
Did you get your textbooks out?
Like I kept those. I think
if you're a Dillo, you did. Come on.
No,
I got mine.
I think we could rent ours for like a dime or buy them for a dime. I don't know. I think we could rent our textbooks.
Fancy.
I know. We didn't have to buy them.
Those are not inexpensive textbooks.
I know. Love that Midwest state school.
Right?
I know. Okay. Alexis, welcome to the show. Like I said, now let's talk about how you two know each other because I don't know you. So I want to get the scoop today.
The scoopity scoop. All right. So I mean, should I start at the very beginning?
Let's start at the very beginning.
Dun, dun, dun.
How far back do I go? Alexis was, but still is. She just hasn't shown up this year. It's really weird and so unprofessional of her. But I guess she was my son's speech therapist from the time he was 2.5 until the time he entered kindergarten. I'll go way back. So at 14 months old, my son's first word obviously was Mickey. I mean,
duh,
like most kids.
Right. That's what every kid's first word is. But he slept with a Mickey, so it was more that Mickey, like it wasn't just Mickey in general or whatever. And it wasn't, a perfect sounding Mickey, but it was a 14-month-old Mickey, like there was multiple sounds happening. So he had that. We're like, oh my God, that's so exciting. I can't believe that's his first word. Obviously, that's his first word, all that. So, after that, though, no other words came. And probably by, I don't know how old he was, 19 months-ish or something, I was like, I haven't heard Mickey in a while, and I don't hear any new words. So then your mind starts going like, do I look into this? And then you have the family around like, it's fine. Boys take a while to talk. So-and-so didn't talk until this point. So-and-so, it's fine. All this kind of stuff. Meanwhile, I'm Googling constantly, and all of that. Never Google. But so it's sort of just in the back of my head. And I think we were like, let's give him until he turns 2. Let's see what's happening. And maybe it was really when he turned 2, where I was, because his birthday's in June, where I was like, let's give him the summer and let's see what happens over the summer. And by September, we'll make a decision. So that's what we did. Still no words, lots of grunts. I knew everything he wanted. I knew what he needed, all of that, but no words. So that September, we started looking into having him evaluated, went through the county, the whole process of it all. And
was that a stressful time?
No, it's cool. No, just kidding.
No panic.
Yeah.
Not at all.
It was actually fun. Like, I was nervous about it because you start to overthink and second guess yourself of like, do I just give him more time? Like, am I going to pressure him? And on the other side, but I don't want to not help him if he does need some help. So,
Right.
all of that. So I'm like, it can't help to have him evaluated. And the worst thing they think is like, okay, we'll just give him some time and we'll reevaluate or whatever it is. So
Right.
he was evaluated in September-ish, maybe early October. And the agency, Alexis, I will call her Allie on this podcast, by the way, because that is what my kids refer to her as. But the agency she works for came to evaluate him. She was playing toys with him just to see what he knew how to say, if he knew what things were without the words, and then had a like pop toy and made it pop and got him to say pop. And it was like the life-changing moment. Like, what? How did you get it? What? Oh my God. And she's like, perfect. That's what I want to see, that you can do it and we can get you there and whatever. So from that point on, she recommended twice a week. I think 45 minutes, probably 2 times 45.
45.
And in walked Alexis for our first session. And so that's the backstory. So, and then she was with us from he was 2.5 till kindergarten, and she hasn't shown up this year for work because now he gets speech at school. So she's whatever, but I keep texting her like, hello.
Where are you?
Hey, where are you? We're waiting.
You have an appointment.
Really? And now our house is even messier. So we did a whole episode on speed cleaning, Allie. And and like what to do when like company is coming.
The oven used often?
Of course,
stuff goes right in the oven.
And we keep yelling. My husband and I keep yelling at Allie, like, "Can you come over? Because we have no reason to clean our house. Like, you need to be coming once a week at least, because we need like a quick spruce up here."
How does the laundry table look right now?
Right now, the laundry table actually is currently horribly in my kids' playroom because it's right outside the laundry room on their like cushions that they sit on. It's moving, which is bad. It's the quarantine life, so it's now has a new spot, so that's not good. So we need to move it up, at least to the dining room table. For God's sakes, we're not animals.
Who uses the dining room table?
Exactly.
That's like the wealthy use. They eat at the table.
I know. Come on now.
Come on. We eat at the kitchen counter.
Right.
My goodness.
On the couches.
Yeah.
Right?
Exactly.
I feel like we're getting off topic.
A little bit.
Okay, Alexis, what made you choose this career path? I feel like this is a job interview question, but I'm going there anyway.
It is a little bit, but no. That's a really good question. I was on a much different career path when I went to college, as I think many people are. I don't know what the percentage is, but it's not big. People who start with one major and end with another. I'm sure that's much more popular. But I thought actually I was going to be an audiologist. I went to school. My undergraduate career idea was I had a major in communication disorders. That's what my option was at the college I went to. And then when I went to graduate school, I went as an audiologist. I was going to be an audiologist. That's what I wanted to do. And when you go to graduate school, you have to spend time, at least one semester, doing the opposite. If you're an audiology major, where I went to college, you have to spend a semester doing a practicum in speech pathology and vice versa. So during my time in speech pathology, I thought, oh, wait a minute, I think I like this better. So I switched halfway through. So I'm halfway to an audiology master's degree, and I switched to speech pathology because I just preferred the interaction with the kids. I've always been someone who likes children and wanted to work with children. And so that's how I ended up there. But I took sign language as a kid, so I was always interested in that. I have a sister who has a hearing impairment, so it was always an interest of mine. I thought on and off about being a teacher, so that's probably what pushed me in that direction. And that's how I ended up being a speech pathologist.
Okay, so what's something you love about your job, and what are some of the frustrations if you feel like sharing? Because I'm just like really curious about this.
Yeah,
She's like, I got a lot.
So there's a lot of things I love about my job. I certainly love, I think my favorite thing, obviously the kids. I work, as a speech pathologist, you can work with a whole range of people. You can work with young children all the way up to adults. And I did, coming from audiology, while I loved the children, I originally thought I'd work in a hospital because you have more of a range. You could work with children, but you could also work with adults. And that's really what I had wanted to do. And but what I love about it really is the interaction with people and families. And I worked in schools for many years. I worked in districts, and I really enjoyed the time with the kids. Not so much all the paperwork. There's a tremendous amount of paperwork in this day and age, probably in every profession, but there's a lot in speech pathology. And there's paperwork if you work in a district, for the district, there's paperwork for the state, there's paperwork for the county, there's a lot of paperwork. So that part I don't love so much, but the impact that you make directly with the children and working in EI and contracting, going into people's homes, you work very closely with the whole family. And so I like that. I like the impact that you make. And very often you see it, sometimes it's very immediate. Sometimes it's not. Sometimes, it takes a while, but every little sound, every little word, it's growth. And so I like that. That's the part I like the most.
Jen, hearing that, I'm like just the interviewer today, I guess. I'm taking over.
I love it.
Hearing that from her perspective, do you have anything to add being the parent?
Sure. And I'll sit here and cry the whole time. So
I may have egged you on just for that purpose.
Yeah, because I'm sitting here trying not to cry as she's talking. Well,
I saw you smiling, so I'm like, I have to ask.
I don't know if I can actually get through. So we have said, since Allie has stopped working for us and has instead become a family member here, we have said, we need to, really what we want to do is, take her on a Disney trip. But when funds allow, that'll happen. But in the meantime, we were like, we just need to go out to dinner with you and all that so that we can just cry out all of our feelings for her and just get it all out. And that hasn't happened yet. So
no, we're working on it.
It's probably going to. So from the parent side, it can be, it is a stressful thing because as a parent, you don't want to see your child struggle at all. Want to make sure you're doing all the right things along the way. And to be in the room and to watch the hard days and to watch the amazing days where he would say a word he's never said before or get a sound he hasn't had before or whatever it was pretty amazing to watch. And I and my husband, both of us, waited a very long time, much longer than some other parents, not as long as all parents, to hear mommy and daddy. So, to have moments like that is huge. And this whole part will make me cry. So to have someone like Alexis, who went above and beyond, because she answered my lengthy texts when I would be like, what do you think about this? Do you think this is something I should look into? Do you think this is okay? He's now doing this. I don't hear this word. Whatever it was, even if it was just to talk, or sometimes I would just be like, who is she? Let me get to know her better and start texting her in lengthy ways. But to have someone truly, honestly care about your child far beyond, oh, she's his teacher, she's his speech therapist, whatever, far beyond that. There is no doubt in my mind the love she has for him, and even for Josie now, that she is 1,000% family. has been for a long time. But to have that support and to have someone be behind your entire family and to help you along the way, especially navigating things like IEP meetings, or to tell me what an IEP is, or to sit with me in the meetings while I was so nervous thinking I was probably going to cry because everyone's sitting there talking about my child. Whatever it is, to have that support is huge. And I think, on our anxiety episode, we were talking a little bit about therapy and how, you may not always click with therapists or whatever it is. You're not always going to have teachers that you click with or doctors or whatever it is. And this was never that. And we considered ourselves so lucky to the point we were worried about sending him to nursery school because we were like, we have Allie. Like, how is it ever going to be better than that? It's all going to be downhill from here. Like, we're never going to have this experience again. But so from, what was the original question? But from the parent side of this, to witness it and go through it and to have her be that person is something we are forever grateful for. So.
Wow. First, let me say how that I'm always very touched by when Jen says stuff like that. Now I'm going to cry. Because obviously as a speech therapist, that's what I would want. I want parents to feel comfort and comforted and supported and like I care for their child, because I do. I think that, full disclosure, Jen and I just had a bond pretty quickly on, and I think we knew, and we said pretty quickly on we'd be friends after. Mm-hmm. We just have a lot in common, so that was nice. But it's important, I think, very important. We're talking in early intervention, which is what we're talking about. You're talking about children who are very young, who their peers are not in this situation. You're not, most other parents aren't handing over their 2-year-old or sometimes younger. I mean, I work with children who are younger than 2, to another adult and saying, here, have my child for an hour and do what you want, and I know when my kids were little, sometimes handing them to their grandparent, I was like, no. And now you're handing them to a stranger and entrusting them and a portion of their development to a stranger. So it's very important for me to make sure, and for most speech therapists and occupational therapists and physical therapists who choose to work with this population, to make sure that families feel supported and understood and cared for. I mean, that's as important as the job that you're doing with the child. And early intervention in particular is yes, it's about the child, but it's about the family. I mean, that's when you make a plan in early intervention, you have a plan called an IFSP, and it's an individual family service plan, and it involves the family, and it's really for the family, not just for the child. As you get older, it's all just about the child, but it's that way for a reason, because these children are very young, and it's about educating not just the child but the whole family. And so you need support, and it's not easy. It's not easy to have a child, no matter how severe or difficult their deficit or delay may be. It's still a deficit. It's still something you didn't expect for your child. It's still, a difference than you imagined. And a boo-boo for your child is upsetting. So this is bigger than a boo-boo. This is for some kids a journey that they're on, and that's a devastating thing. And it takes a while to process that, and it's very important to have someone who can support you through that and help you through that as best they can. And so I'm just happy that I could be that even in a little bit. for Jen.
Just a little bit.
Just from a former preschool teacher perspective, I've worked with very young toddlers. So, and ones that didn't have delays or deficits and being, I just think being with them for 45 minutes, I've had to basically do somersaults and handstands to keep them entertained.
Yeah.
And that's a group of 7 to 14. So they had each other and for us to get through something. So for you to work with, one child for that long and to keep them stimulated and to work and get through something, like it takes a very special kind of person to keep them working with you and on task. Like that's incredible. You must have a lot of tricks up your sleeve.
I do. Yes. And I think everybody goes about it differently. There are some people who are very structured and they work for a while to get the child to be structured and to go with them. And I'm not one of those people. For me, I'm a more, go with the flow and let the child lead you kind of person. And for me, the key is that flexibility. And, in education, there's lesson plans and sometimes you have to write a formal lesson plan. But for me, the lesson plan is what the goal is, not necessarily the activity. So for me, as long as I can get what my goal is, I don't really care what the activity is. Not everybody is that flexible. And so people sometimes have very concrete ideas of what they want and how to get it. And sometimes that is a great way to work. And that works for a lot of people. And it has worked for me sometimes too. I find with this younger population, that's hard. The younger they are, the harder that is. So, you have to have lots of choice. And also every child is different. Like some kids like the repetitiveness of the same toys over and over. And I'm like, really? Aren't you bored with that? You want me to bring that again? Or I'll leave it in the car because my car is, like my toy store.
Toys R Us.
Yeah, exactly. And they'll ask for the toy. And I'm like, oh, it's in the car. Really? I didn't bring it. And they'll be disappointed. And I'll be shocked because it's been the same toy we've been playing with for a month. Yeah. And I thought, oh, let's bring something new. And they're disappointed you didn't bring it back in. So, it's a lot of following their lead and making a lot of something out of nothing. But, whatever works for a child. Every kid is different. So you have to go with what works for them. But there's some somersaulting and setting yourself on fire and whatever you can do to keep them entertained. And sometimes you can't. You can't.
Yeah, there have definitely been times, she'll walk in with bags that are like, how are you carrying this? Like,
it's like a Mary Poppins bag.
It's insane.
Yeah.
And there were definitely days he was like, no, I'm not doing this today. I am not having it. Where we just all like sit on the floor like, okay. And she'd be like, show me your new toy. What about this? You know, and just coax him to a point to try to get him. I think as he got a little older, there was like okay, we'll do this. Then we're going to do what I have for you, and you can kind of start adding layers, but they had also already built that bond and that connection. And, she didn't come out of the gate like, no, get rid of these toys, get out of here. This is what we're doing, So she's extremely flexible and easygoing and has so many songs to entertain everyone that are still in my head that I use now that I'm homeschooling.
Doesn't entertain my own children, but other children.
Patience of a saint, it sounds like.
Yes, with to some extent, I mean, but full disclosure, my own child needed speech therapy when she was very, very young, and it wasn't me who did it. The cobbler's children have no shoes, and she wanted nothing to do with me. So she had speech therapy from a wonderful speech therapist who was also very different than I am in her approach to speech therapy, and a brilliant woman who was very rigid. Even at the age of like 2.5, my daughter sat down at the table and she did what she was told to do. And it took a little while, but she did it. She made a tremendous amount of progress. It wasn't my approach, but my approach didn't work with, I'm the mom, so it wasn't going to work, but very different, but it worked, so, but I've been there too. So I also can kind of understand that feeling of giving your child over to someone else.
that kind of brings me to my next question. I'm sorry, I completely interrupted
you.
No,
go ahead.
Is there like a ripe age when parents should seek intervention for their children? Does it depend? What would you suggest as a speech language pathologist?
Yeah. So absolutely, it depends. It depends. Kids can have a delay and if they're going to have a delay, can have a delay at any age, at any stage of development. So it definitely depends. You can have children who have delay from the outset, who don't develop language either at all or in the process that we would normally expect them to, or they can have developed language and then have delays or deficits within that process. So there's really no age or stage that you would expect a delay. Kids can have delays, all the way up until, school age. And then even within school age, kids can struggle in certain areas of like sentence structure and language structure and development. So kids can have delays really at any time. So there's not one real time to look, but obviously when children are developing language, there are milestones that you look for. First words, even before that, babbling and sounds that they're making and things like that. So around a year, sometimes somewhere between 9 months and 15 months, somewhere around a year, kids usually have a first word. Usually by 2, kids have sentences, maybe it's 2 words together, sometimes 3 words together. Some kids have that, at 18 months. They start putting 2 words together very often, but sentences at 2. But there's a huge range of what is considered within the normal limit. So if you suspect that your child has a delay, the first thing you would do would be to speak to your pediatrician about it. That's usually the first place that you go. Most pediatricians are pretty knowledgeable about what to do and when to say, let's wait and see, and when to say, okay, we've waited long enough, let's move on. Every once in a while, a pediatrician maybe waits a little too long, but for the most part, I also think that there's a lot to be said for mother's intuition. I think that moms know when something isn't right, even first-time moms, unless they really haven't spent a lot of time around kids and don't have other friends who have kids and haven't seen. I think for the most part, moms know. Not always, but have a sense. So I think if you suspect that your child has a language delay or a speech delay, the first thing you do is see your pediatrician. And I would hope the first thing your pediatrician would do is send you and your child for a hearing test, because that's the first thing when you have a speech or language delay that should be ruled out. Most of the time, it has nothing to do with a speech and language delay, but it is certainly the first thing that should be ruled out so that you can just check it off and say, okay, that's not it. He agrees.
Yeah.
For those of you listening, my 4-year-old is on my lap right now. And I notice he says things like lello for yellow, a watt for a lot, bigger and rainbow instead of, the R for rainbow and bigger. Those seem to be pretty common things.
Right.
Are there any, corrections that you could make? Is that something they fix over time? Do you have to, go to a speech pathologist to have those corrected?
So certain speech errors, those are speech sound errors, are some kids just develop all the sounds of speech just naturally and they sound like adults, at the age of 3. Some kids don't. So an error like that where an R, a W, an L, those kinds of errors are very typical and for a lot of kids, and very often they resolve on their own. They just do. For some kids, they don't. There's a range of when you would consider, so those sounds come in at certain ages where we would expect to start hearing them, but they wouldn't be considered stable where we would say, okay, well now it's an error until much later. So usually there's a range of 1 to 3 years where a child has started saying the sound until we would expect it to be stable where they're using it without any errors. And at that point, then we would say, okay, well now it's a problem. So a lot of those very typical sounds are not things that you should just worry about right away.
Okay.
Go ahead.
Oh, no, because I noticed, I hear kindergartners do that a lot.
Yeah.
And you mentioned earlier how, sometimes when kids get a little older, they might need speech therapy.
Yeah.
So is that kind of what you meant when you said when they might get a little older, or were you referring to maybe when they lose speech due to some other?
No. So that's what I was talking about. So for some kids, So early intervention. So we're talking about birth to 3. They really only concern themselves with the development of language, of sound. They want, obviously, in order for kids to talk, they need sound, but they have really no interest in what those sounds sound like. So they have no interest in what we consider articulation, how those letters sound. So if there are errored letter sounds, that's not something that they really concern themselves with. As long as the child is producing sounds and communicating, they're looking for kids who can be communicators. That's what they concern themselves with. Later on, when kids get to the preschool age or kindergarten and later than that, then we can look at articulation as something that could be concerning. And particularly because sometimes kids who have specific articulation errors, sometimes numerous articulation errors, can affect how kids learn to read. And that's the most important part of it, obviously, how they sound. You want them to be able to communicate and be understood by all their peers. That's very important, obviously. And that's part of your educational curriculum. That's part of the communicative curriculum. They have to be understood, but also it can affect how they spell and how they read and write. So that's why it's not really an issue until you get to school age.
Interesting. I didn't know that. This is so fascinating to me. I'm sorry, Jen. I'm stealing
you're fine.
The conversation per usual, but this is so interesting to me.
No, and so his school offers a dual language program where you can do basically half a day English, half a day Spanish.
Cool.
And I was really excited about it. And at the same time, I started but is that going to be tough for him? And obviously, who am I going to text when I have that question? And you even said, it's not like he couldn't do it. He just may have the same difficulty he's currently having still with speech, which at this point is articulation, certain letter sounds still, and putting them in the right place. That may carry over to Spanish.
Right.
But
when he gets it, he'll get it.
Right. But I did choose to keep him out of that program for this year because I was like, you know what? He's also going to kindergarten. It's it's a new school. It's a lot. And it's going to be a new speech therapist. So there was a lot happening to him. So I was like, let me not throw another language out there for him this year. But it is funny when, if he watches Dora and he tries to say some of the words, I'm like, well, okay.
We'll get there.
We'll get there. Yeah.
R is pretty prominent in some, and that trilled R in Spanish. Yeah.
Gosh. I took Spanish for 8 years. I still can't roll my R.
Oh,
no, that's a hard one. Yeah.
It is.
But R, those L's and those R's are much later stabilizing sounds than you would think. They're 6, 7 before, even sometimes 8 for an R, before you would consider them really errored. So for some kids may have them at 3, at 4, at 5, but before you'd really be concerned about it, it's like 3rd grade for a lot of those kids. So, and then also in order for kids, sometimes my own child is one of those kids who didn't have some of those sounds, but if it's not impactful educationally, then school districts aren't really interested in remediating it. So then sometimes you just have to take them elsewhere. So privately, through your insurance, or pay for it privately in order to address those issues.
Yeah, that would make sense. Or Like I grew up going to a private school, so then they don't do anything with that really at all.
So actually, it depends on the state. I don't know if it's a federal, I should know this, whether it's federal or state actually, but the law has changed a little bit. It used to be for the private schools during elementary school, there's a requirement to provide a certain amount of services. And it used to be your own home school district that provided the service. Now it's the district that the school resides in provides the service. I think once you get to high school, it's another ballgame. I think then they get to choose whether they're going to provide. They're allowed to say, you can come here, but we don't provide service for you if you're someone who needs service. But I think through elementary school, schools are required, even private schools to some degree. I know Catholic schools are, private Catholic schools.
Interesting. Yeah, I should double check what it is. I believe, I should double check. Okay, Jen, do you have any questions? You know her a lot better than I do.
I do.
A little bit.
I'd say a little bit here and there. No, I mean, I do have a question of why she continues to not show up. But no, so our world has changed a bit, just a tad lately.
Just a little bit.
A lot of us with kindergartners, like the two of us at home, plus another child, are finding it a juggling act. Some find it more difficult than others to, kind of figure out the day overall. If you have a child who, one, you suspect has a speech delay, which you've already spoken to of the steps to take, but right now it might be a little more difficult to do that. But what are some things, maybe if you're in those early stages of like, maybe I'll wait it out, that you could do to maybe
in quarantine? Or
in quarantine, even at home with them, like, are there things that you could do to see, like, I don't know, maybe this is something I need to look into, but let me try these things and see if it helps them get some new vocabulary or words out in general or whatever.
Yeah, I like that.
Sure. Yeah. So first of all, for school age, it is your district that is responsible for services. And all districts, even though technically they're closed, they are still responsible for providing service and for doing the evaluations and for all those things. So even if they're not open, if you have access to websites, if there is a telephone number you can Google and find out there. It would either be your special ed department, sometimes it's the pupil services department, but you can call and let them know that you have some concerns and you'd like to discuss that with someone and possibly having your child evaluated. So that would be your home school district. You can just call your home school building if you don't know. I'm sure everybody's got voicemail and they would have to follow up. They're required to follow up. So that's that. So being stuck at home obviously is very difficult. In general, while you're waiting, because the process can take some time, or if you're just not sure and you want to just try and help your child, or even a child who is already getting services. I mean, the best things that you can do always for your child are the number one thing you can do for language development, sound development, any of those things are reading to your child. I mean, everybody's sick of hearing about it, but read it develops language skills. It models for them. So it gives the child a picture of what words and language should sound like. It's really one of the more functional things that you can do to help a child. That's not to say that it is going to fix them, that if you are automatically or already reading with your child, that should have fixed the problem. It's not going to, but it certainly is one of the best things you can do for a lot of reasons, but also for speech and language development. And also providing your child with a lot of opportunities and giving them the time and space to respond. So we are inundated with what we've got going on. A lot of us are working from home and we have other children and we're trying to homeschool our other children. And so there's a tremendous amount going on. So to try and find the time to pause and give these children who are struggling to communicate for whatever reason, the time is very important. So, and to give them opportunities. So I have said, you never want to frustrate your child, but every once in a while, frustration, just a tiny bit of frustration, can be your friend. So if you can, if you know there's something that your child really loves and that they want and you're playing, if you can just move it slightly away from them to give them an opportunity to ask for it. Or if they really like the green cup and they have the green cup every night and you give them the red cup tonight so that they can ask for it. And just try and set up some opportunities for your child to need to use some communication. And then when they have that opportunity, to model for them, so to give them an example at their level. If they're not speaking at all, you don't want to then give them a whole sentence that you expect them to say. You want to give them one word, but then you want to expand their language. If they're using one word, but they're at an age where they should be using 2 or 3 words, and they give you a word, so they say cup, you could say, oh, you want the blue cup. That's great. Here's the blue cup. So just to take whatever they have and to build on it, but to take the time to kind of make that opportunity for them and then give them the example of what you expect from them. So, to expand on what they're saying is also really important. Again, the reading, and then ask them a lot of questions. Like if it's hard. It's not like they're going out and going home from school, but like, what did you do today? Mm-hmm. Or if you're making dinner and they're in the other room, oh, what were you playing? And it's always good if you know what was happening. It's hard when they're at school and they come home and, very often they say, what'd you do today? And they say nothing, which isn't true. But we now know everything they're doing. So you can kind of help them along and give them, a little fill in of what they're doing. You could make the sentence and fill in the blank, like you do when you're singing with them. You say twinkle, twinkle, little, and let them fill in star. You can do the same thing with whatever they were doing. Oh, I saw that, you and Josie were playing with and leave the blank and let them fill in the nouns. So just to give them as many opportunities as you can to kind of give them language and then give them success so that they feel like they have some control and some power too with their language.
I remember before I really, I think probably that summer, I was like, oh, we'll give him time. I realized that a friend of ours, his mom was a retired speech pathologist. So I was like, oh, maybe I'll ask her, and she had given me one of those forms to fill out, the little checklist and everything.
Checklist,
And she had told me, try to give him a lot of choices.
Yes.
So that he has to, kind of like the cup idea, give him a red cup or a blue cup. Which one do you want? And even if he's pointing to just one, just to get him used to it and using the words. And I think, and even during the evaluation and kind of, because there's also a lot of paperwork on the parental side of things. You're kind of filling out a mortgage when this all starts.
Yes.
But I remember during those meetings hearing, when we have those really big books, I think a lot of parents have them, where either it's the alphabet or it's animals or random things like umbrella, bed, triangles, circles, whatever it is. And I remember being asked, like, do you think he knows everything in the book? And we said, oh, yeah, absolutely. He knows, what's what. And they said, ask, if there's a picture of an airplane, don't say, where's the airplane? Say, what flies in the air?
Right.
And just to keep like expanding on what they already know and like keep it going and keep the ball rolling, which it's all real simple things. Or if you're in the kitchen, to talk about, I'm cooking dinner now, I'm washing a dish now, I'm opening the refrigerator, just to constantly be talking. And it's all simple, like, that makes a lot of sense. Like, why haven't I been doing that?
Right.
But it kind of kickstarts you to be more aware of like, oh, if I'm using more words, they're picking up on more words.
And I always say, if you are sick of hearing your own voice, then you're doing it right.
Right.
My mom, I call it momentary commentary because she never stops talking when she's just in general. She double majored in special education and elementary education. And so she's like, she just vomits education and teaching everywhere. And I think there's 15 grandchildren. So I watched her parent a lot because I'm the youngest. And she's just always talking during movies, and she's always talking to the kids. And I call it momentary commentary.
Yep, I like that.
We'll walk through the grocery store, and she'll have a grandkid, and she'll be like, I think I need some peas. Do you know what aisle the peas are in? Peas are green. And I'm like, oh my gosh, how much can you say about peas? And now that I have my own kids, I get it.
Yeah. Yes. Well, that's what I mean by, if you are sick of hearing yourself talk, then you're doing the right thing, because that's what you need. You need to comment and talk about everything you see around you and expand on it, and talk about the color and the size and what it looks like and where it is, and ask yes, no questions. And, what's that to get a child to label is functional in that they can say the word, but once they say the word, it's no longer a functional thing, because that's it. So they know the word. You want them to be able to use that word functionally in lots of other ways. So expansion is big.
Yeah, for sure.
So funny. It's so true.
Yeah.
Before we go, I do have a question. I read this in one of my textbooks when I was a speech language pathologist major. You said communication disorders.
They called them different. Mine was called communication disorders as an undergraduate. Yeah, they called them different things. Yeah,
that was mine too. Is it true that up until the age of 5, kids can learn unlimited languages as long as they are consistently exposed to it? Because their brains are like little sponges.
Yes, I think that it may be beyond that, I think, depending on child. But yes, there's no, people went back and forth for many years about whether you teach a child who has like a language learning issue, whether you allow them to speak, if there's 2 different languages in the house, whether you allow them to continue to do so. And even in my career, it's gone back and forth, where we used to say, no, don't do that. And then we said, yes, of course, now do that. But yeah, kids can learn an unlimited number of languages. I mean, kids are little sponges, and if you are speaking it in the house, they will learn them. Sometimes it will slow the process a little bit because they're taking in so much information, and they also then have to organize it. They have to kind of file it, and sometimes they will speak all 3 languages or 2 or 4 languages at one time. You'll hear a little bit of this and a little bit of that. But yeah, kids can learn probably even beyond 5, depending on the child. But that's when they're most probably open for language learning. But we in this country have it backwards, that we don't teach language until high school or junior high. Most of the countries do it before that.
I learned that, and I'm like, why do we teach it starting in you think? My son's raising his hand. I thought that was so backwards that we learned it so late.
Very backwards.
They learn it. They're little sponges up until age 5. You'd think get started on that ASAP.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. We're among the only country, I think, that teaches language, waits till, junior high school, middle school now. Sorry, it's not junior high school anymore. Showing my age, to teach language. Yeah. Not every district, but most districts in this country do.
Yeah.
Yeah. It's a shame.
Well, thank you so much for being on the show.
Welcome. Thank you so much for having me.
I'm so happy we met you. I met you. Jen's happy she met you too.
Clearly, I've been crying the whole episode.
Yes. God. Thank you so much for having me, guys. It was a lot of fun.
This was fun. If you enjoyed this episode, make sure to give us a review on iTunes if you'd like. You can find us on Magic Mom Monday on Twitter and on Instagram at Magical Mommy Mondays. And Jen and I will put our own personal social media handles in the show notes as well. I hope you enjoyed this episode again, and we'll talk to you on the next one. Bye, everyone.
Deuces. Thank you for listening to this episode of the Magical Mommy Monday podcast. We hope you enjoyed it. You can find us on Twitter at Magic Mom Monday and on Instagram at Magical Mommy Mondays. The music you heard on this podcast was written and produced by Matt Harvey. We'll see you next time.